Countdown. There we go. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our Teaching Tips Live series. This is the first in our series for the fall 2015 season. And today we're going to be joined with Brooke Sheridan, and she's going to be talking to us about visual syllabi and how we might use them to get our students not only to read, but to absorb information presented by our introductory documents. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the screen over to Brooke, and we'll get started.
Hello, am I showing the right screen?
It says the Illustrated Syllabus.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am getting a report that some people are not able to see anything except for the blue-black.
Okay. It may, so we may just have a little bit of lag. So people who are watching may see us in a few minutes.
Okay.
And as a reminder, if people are watching from the Google Plus page, they can submit questions. And as questions come in, I'll forward them on to you, Brooke.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Kristen. I'm Brooke Sheridan, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Illustrated Syllabus and the many different forms that a visual syllabus can take and why that could be valuable, and then maybe answer some questions. You can find out more about me here at this I Teach You site if you want. A lot of the work that I've done for e-learning has been looking into modes of visual delivery and how to create visual assignments or present material in a visual way using comics and infographics and drawings and things like that. So there's more to be learned there. So the first example I'm going to show is kind of the go-to example for the Illustrated Syllabus, and can also be a somewhat overwhelming first view at what an Illustrated Syllabus can look like. This is from cartoonist Linda Barry's course called I don't remember, but it was about drawing in the mind, and she taught at the University of Wisconsin. This was in 2013, and almost all of her course material was presented in this way, and she really encouraged, well, actually I think it was part of the course, that students respond in kind, that they start to think about textual approaches in a more visual way. So this can seem initially really overwhelming, but one of the interesting things that you realize that happens is as you practice building this kind of a presenting material visually like this, there is a certain natural movement that the eye is going to make anyway, and there's a logic to the way Barry has composed these pages. And if you go and you can look at her website here at the Nearsighted Monkey, she documents everything, and she also includes student work. But she's been doing this for decades, and you can see how she builds a page. She doesn't kind of just start drawing. She uses a non-photo blue pencil to lay down her first outline of whatever the visual work's going to be, and then she builds from there. So this is what a really practiced, seasoned cartoonist comes up with when they're shooting for something visual. But I don't think the majority of people who are just starting to think about a visual syllabus are necessarily going to be at this level or even want to present something that looks like this, because to some eyes it could look chaotic. The concern would be that students are going to miss information, although we'll talk about more later about how that works. But so here's an example. This is an instructor who's used Pixton, which is a free online tool, and she's using it at its most basic level, that is without a lot of shifting of the background or the art or the characters. She's just, by very simply taking the information that she has in her syllabus and creating a dialogue with it, she's putting the course itself into a sort of narrative, which all courses naturally are. There is a narrative to every course. So instead of presenting the information in a dry sort of way, she's created this dialogue, and you can link to the full, these are just a few panels from that syllabus, but you can link here to the full example. And one thing this does is if you're presenting the information in this sort of narrative manner, students are, it's just, and you can imagine this yourself, it's a different way for students to absorb the information rather than, reading sort of a list of requirements. And in this example, I think this instructor is taking advantage more of the dialogue format than the actual visual format. The characters don't really matter so much, but that's fine. It's not about sort of the level of artwork that you're creating. So this is an infographic style syllabus, and this is created by Madera Mason, who's now a faculty development coordinator here at eLearning, and also was an instructional designer and an English instructor. I think she used Adobe Photoshop or Illustrator to make a more visually consumable, a more visually friendly version of the information in her syllabus. One thing she did also is, oops, that's not good. She lets students read it. She gives them the choice to read it either in this format or in the standard format to which they've become accustomed. And for some students, that may be plenty. That may be enough for them to hit all the salient points. They're going to remember it. Here, the example is, if you're looking for a more traditional format, you can download yeah, that's all. Okay, well, she offered a different format, a different way to look at it rather than just the infographic, but I think you're also going to get some students who this infographic format is going to work better for them as far as wanting to get through the entire document and being able to actually remember some of the information. So Lawrence Musgrove is an instructor and a cartoonist, and he goes a little bit more in depth into, on his website called The Illustrated Professor, which I link to along here, a little bit more information on how sort of the non-artist can use visual formatting. And he's, this example here, the first day of a visual agenda, and this is for a graphic novel course, so it's sort of a meta approach to the content of the course. But so he's sort of presenting really, really basic ways with which we're all pretty familiar. He's got the shape of a head, a very nominal indication of pointing, and then the question mark to illustrate a student or whomever this can represent asking a question. So what he's doing is sort of providing an example that you don't have to have sort of Linda Berry level cartooning skills in order to communicate via images. We all understand really some very basic shapes and signs and what they mean. So this is an example of a language instructor, who wanted to kind of take a stab at this sort of Linda Berry style or visual or a sketchnoting style of a syllabus. And I think this is a good first stab, and I think probably as she revises it, she's going to see some things change that will make it easier for students to move through the course or to move through the document itself. But I think this is a good start to what can seem like a pretty overwhelming approach, especially if you're used to a text-only model of making a syllabus. This is another approach to creating a visual syllabus. This person just is organizing information a little differently. It looks a little bit more like a sidebar in a magazine or something like that, separating bits of information into these more consumable chunks, again, rather than a dense block of text or even bullet points. Oops. And a really different approach, and this depends on how you feel about Prezi. I don't love Prezi just because I think it might be as simple as a motion sickness kind of thing. I don't care for the zooming in and out, but I mean, that's a minor complaint, and probably most students don't feel that way. So if you can take advantage of this format, you can walk students through the syllabus or an assignment or anything you want. You can walk them through it the way you want them to read it, rather than allowing them to skim through it sort of unguided or undirected. So this is a guided reading of a syllabus, which you could narrate if you wanted. You can see that you can embed video, you can link to other sites, things like that. So it's really pretty flexible and useful. And students can go back and review it. Again, you can augment this with a text-based syllabus for students who absorb information more usefully that way. This is an example of an infographic style, another infographic style syllabus. This instructor used PictoChart, and I link out to it on the resource page. You won't necessarily have to have any skills using Photoshop or finding stock images, that kind of thing, in order to create an infographic. This will kind of walk you through the process, at least get you started. There are different templates, and you can just experiment. So if you've never tried this before, it may seem daunting to go from something that looks like this, what we're all pretty used to. We've learned to read this. Probably a lot of students have learned to read this, and our concern may be that we're not actually going to make anything easier by putting it in a visual format. But again, you can continue to provide the text-based syllabus, and you can augment that with your first forays into this visual syllabus making. So one of the useful ways to start is to maybe, I don't know, you don't even necessarily have to think about what you want it to look like. If you're thinking, I want a Lindaberry style syllabus, I want it to look like that, I want it to be 3 pages, I want students to move through it quickly, that kind of thing. It may be more useful just to start by picking out what matters in your course. What are the most salient points? What do you want students to walk away with? And seeing if you can actually break things down into more consumable bits. This links to an article it's an illustrated article about this movement. This person's outside of education. It's in business, I think, just talking about presenting information. And he says outright he's definitely a proponent of visual thinking, and that creating anything in a visual manner when maybe normally it's in a textual manner, it's not about this is better than what we had before. Nothing's right or wrong. It's about recognizing that there's more than one way to present information, and that some people are going to benefit from one method and some people are going to benefit from another method. So I recommend this full article. It's really interesting. And all of these articles, I'm linking to all of the sources where these images came from, and they all continue to link out to just tons of resources of people who really want to work at making the syllabus an important part of the course, not just because of the information, but because it's actually working to convey a sense of the course itself, of the instructor's personality. Thinking, again, if you're starting from scratch, not getting too bogged down in what you want your syllabus to look like ultimately, maybe by using one of these templates or just by sitting down with pen and paper and drawing, that the information, you might find that there is sort of a logical arrangement for your information that you can present to students. Maybe something like an infographic is not going to work, but something like a Prezi will work. And I think, well, Linda Berry is brilliant, so a lot of the things she says apply to many, many things. So this is the page of resources. PictoChart is that source that I mentioned about that'll help walk you through creating an infographic. Pinterest, teachers, especially K-12 teachers, but really instructors from across academia, make really good use of Pinterest as far as posting examples and what they like and what they want to do. So you go onto this Pinterest page, and you are going to find a ton of examples of syllabi presented in alternate formats. Everybody links to Linda Berry, because she's sort of become the famous example of the non-traditional syllabus. But so many ways to present it to just get you started. And of course, there's our own I Teach You site on creating effective syllabi. So and this site goes through not only, at the end, there are some suggestions for alternate formats, but just the content of the syllabus itself, and including requirements, but also getting some sense of who you are, what the course is, to maybe intrigue your students a little bit rather than presenting them with this dry list of expectations that they have seen in various versions from across their courses, to maybe something that is a little more intriguing and reflects a sense of the course itself. So here's this list of interesting resources. Do we have any questions?
We do have questions, Brooke. We have a question here. Someone is asking, what are some of the student reactions to the visual syllabi? And these students in particular, did they experience any challenges?
Well, I think that I've never heard of students having any kind of negative response to a visual syllabus or an alternative syllabus, because usually instructors are presenting it in a traditional format as well. Students, I have heard positive responses, and just that it's nice to have an alternate form of the information provided. And Linda Berry's example, that course itself was about negotiating or navigating visual information. So I think there was purpose beyond the aesthetic to why she created her syllabus the way she did. But I mean, I can see students, especially freshmen, perhaps revolting against a Berry-style syllabus at the outset if that were the only thing they were given. But again, if it's an augment, then I haven't heard any problems.
Yeah, and a number of the examples that you showed really jumped out at me. In particular, the algebra syllabus. I remember way back when I took algebra, let's say like middle school, I think, when we first had it. I would have loved somebody to just give me a very simple explanation without presenting me from the outset with equations, because for me that's really stressful. And being a visual person personally, that I think would have been a much easier way to kind of ease into algebra for me. So that's a personal preference. I want to take an opportunity before we continue on, Brooke, just to remind viewers that they are able to ask questions. So if you want to submit a question, please feel free to do so. And Brooke, you mentioned a number of times that you are going to be sharing, or you have shared, resources and links from your presentation. And what I'll do is, after this recording has closed, I'll go to where it's going to be stored on YouTube, and I'll link your presentation so that if people want to go back through and access the resources that you're pointing to, they'll be able to quickly get back to them.
Okay.
While we're waiting for questions, I'm curious if there are people who feel like they aren't necessarily the best candidate for drawing, how they might get started with putting together a visual syllabus. You mentioned some ways to do so, but I think hearing that again might be good.
Lawrence Musgrove's syllabus, his visual agenda, there's more information on his site. That's useful. Let me link to something here that I didn't include. There's a book called Picture It. Wait, no, that's a kid's book. There's a book by Molly Bang. Picture this. Okay. You can actually get a PDF of the entire book. And Molly Bang, if we can safely look at images here, I think we can, yes. So she goes through and tells the story of Little Red Riding Hood, and sort of element by element of a picture shows us how images can work. So in this example, this is a really, really basic example, she shows that something as simple as eye shape is going to indicate something to us, not because we in this class have learned that that's what these things mean, but sort of as a cultural language, we have all sort of evolved with this understanding that this is what this can, just from watching cartoons as a kid, or reading, even passively consuming comics or something like that, that we've learned that this triangle means a stupid wolf, this diamond means a mean wolf. And she begins the book with sort of spatial orientation. Initially, all of these, if the wolf's head's not there, all these triangles are straight. We know it's a forest. This requires no drawing ability. It's just a matter of composition. And if this triangle is there and there's a tree in front of it, we know, we get an understanding of space. So her book, and again, when this is over, I'll link to it so you can actually look at the whole thing. Here's an example of that distance, and how by tilting some of the trees, you create a more sinister environment. So this may be a little bit more in-depth in storytelling than you might want, but it's useful to look at, again, if you consider yourself not good at representational drawing, then that could be helpful. There's also, I would also recommend, let me get back to, sorry, on my little bio page here, it links to stuff that I've done. And further on down, again, I'll link to this directly out of the thing. There's, oh, that's the one that didn't record. But we do have the, what do you call it? The slideshow for it on visual note-taking, which, again, this is sort of what this instructor is starting with. You can see there's not really a lot of representational art here. She's using shadows, directional arrows, just the little thought bubbles here that indicate students are, it's all well and good to, sort of focus on the idealistic aspects of the class, but what about grades and sort of other logistical aspects? So you can see that it's not necessarily about creating representational art. It's about utilizing this toolbox that we really have. We have all had it at our disposal for a long time. It's just gone kind of unpracticed as far as creating it with our hands, and probably is going to be end up something. Your successful product is going to be the result of a lot of experimenting.
Okay, great, thank you. I really like, even in this example, yeah, everything that she's given emphasis to, or just added a little bit of extra line to it, my eye is just drawn right to it.
Mm-hmm.
So we haven't gotten any additional questions yet. Is there anything else you want to sign off with before we conclude today's Teaching Tip Live, Brooke?
No, I'll just say that I will add links to those two things that I mentioned, Molly Bang's thing and the visual note-taking, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, I want to thank everybody who joined us for joining us for this Teaching Tip Live. Our next Teaching Tip Live is coming up October 9th at 1 p.m. So stay tuned for that. There'll be more information on the UAF eLearning Google Plus page and on the iTeachU website. And of course, if you're following us on Twitter, we'll be putting out information there as well. So Brooke, thanks again for sharing all of these wonderful examples and ideas for using these visual syllabi. Again, thanks.
You betcha.
All right.